Hey guys, you guys have been asking me for a 4000 damage badge tutorial for a while. I really tried my best with this one. It was really frustrating to make. I ran into a bunch of obstacles, but I tried my best. I put my all into it, so I really hope you guys get something out of it, and I really hope it helps you guys achieve everything you want to achieve. Before we go into the video, I just want to start this video and every other video going forward from now off with one thing. That is letting you guys know that I care about you, you matter, and that if no one else believes in you, I believe in you. Another thing I want to mention is that I'd really appreciate it if we hit 1,000 subscribers. It would really help me out with being able to dedicate time to making these videos, because at 1,000 subscribers, YouTube allows you to monetize your videos, and that would really make it easier to set aside time to make more YouTube videos for you guys. Alrighty, and now we're on to the video. So the first thing I want to talk about is where to drop and how to drop. How to drop is going to be a freebie for me. What I like to do and what I find works best is pinging exactly where you want to land, and then right around 500 meters, that's when you want to drop out of the dropship. That ensures that you get to the location you want to drop either before everybody else or right around the same time everybody else does. I find that it varies. Sometimes you get luckier, sometimes you get there at the same time as everybody else. Now let's talk about how you want to pick your drop. The beginning of the game is extremely important, more important than people realize. You're really going to need that extra damage at the beginning of the game to hold you through till the end of the game. So in general, you want to drop somewhere that at least 3 squads are dropping. Sometimes you can make it work with 1 or 2, but I find 3 is about the standard. If more squads than that come along, that's great too. The more the better, just as long as you can survive, because it becomes increasingly difficult to survive and find loot if there are more squads there. Alright, now let's talk about how your first fight is going to go. This is going to be the fight that you just witnessed on your screen. It's the first couple of kills, and those first couple of kills are essential. What you need to prepare for that is you need to grab a gun that you are good with, and maybe a secondary gun. It helps to have a secondary gun, but your primary is absolutely vital. It has to be a gun that you are confident using. After you find your weapons, you're going to want to maybe find 2 or 4 more shield cells and then 2 more syringes. Those are going to allow you to have stuff to actually heal from, because you're going to need to start pushing people immediately. Now this is what I'd argue the most difficult part of the 4000 damage badge. You have to try and kill everyone at the hot drop. It's okay if you don't, but you have to play with that mentality of having to push everyone and knock as many people as possible. You need to do as much damage as possible. You're going to try to kill someone as quickly as possible, you're going to thirst them, then you're going to maybe grab a shield swap, and you're going to move on. Speed is going to be absolutely essential throughout your first fight at the hot drop and throughout the whole 4K overall. You really need to kill someone, thirst someone, and then move on to the next guy. There is no time to just stand around or loot anymore. Ammo is not going to be as important towards the beginning. You're only going to want a stack or 2, but as it gets later into the game, you're going to want to be running more and more ammo, because you're just going to burn through that ammo quickly. So at the beginning of the hot drop, just make sure you grab maybe a stack. As you start moving, you're going to want 2 or 3, even 4, 5, 6 stacks of ammo. Now after you've killed everyone at the place you just landed, you're going to want to grab a decent second gun if you haven't already, maybe some attachments. You're going to want to make sure you have a better shield, and then lots of syringes and shield cells, and maybe a battery if you get lucky enough to stumble upon one. After you've got all this, you're going to want to push your next fight. Your next fight is going to be very similar to the first fight. It's going to go more or less the same way. You're going to try to kill people as fast as you can. Speed is going to be key here again. You're going to want to knock someone, thirst them immediately, maybe grab their shield, and then move on. If you land at one of those hot drops that doesn't have that much loot, it's okay to loot while pushing up to another squad. Just make sure you're looting the essential things, only things you need, and only along with the guidelines of this video. Alright, so while I'm taking my second fight and trying to find a little bit more loot for it, I'm going to introduce you to a concept I find is pretty helpful in predicting whether you're going to have a 4000 damage game or not. You're going to want to keep time by keeping track of how many squads there are left in the game. Right now you can see there are 14 squads left in the game. I'm going to be dividing up the game in time by how many squads there are left in the game. This will make more sense as we go along through the video. But I find that by the time there is 10 squads left in the game, if you have 1500 damage, there's a small chance you're going to get a 4K. I find that if you have 2000 damage when there's 10 squads left, you got a decent chance of getting a 4K. But if you have 2500 damage by the time there are 10 squads left, you have a really good chance of having a 4K game. I find that this is the benchmark you're going to want to shoot for. And to make sure this idea sticks in your head, I'm going to have you pay attention to how much damage I have when there's 10 squads left. And let me know, did I have a good chance, a great chance, or was it guaranteed that I was going to drop a 4K? So the first half of the game, which is before there are 10 squads remaining, you're going to want to play really aggressive and push as many fights as you can, remembering to thirst every single person you knock down. That's going to be very important in helping you get the extra damage you need to get you to that 4K. After 10 squads, though, you're going to play a little bit more passive, and we're going to talk about that later once we actually reach 10 squads in our gameplay. Right now, we got to talk about your team. We got to talk about the people you're playing with. You can either be playing solo queue, where you're just playing alone and you get 2 randoms, or you can be playing with a friend or 2. Either way, the game's going to go a little different depending on whether you're playing alone or with friends. I'm going to talk about friends first. If you decide to go for a 4K with friends, it's very important that your friends don't shoot anybody and don't kill anybody. Your friends have to go into it with the mentality of they are just there to make sure nobody shoots you in the back and nobody catches you off guard. Even if they do have to kill someone for whatever reason, to stop you from getting thirsted maybe, or to stop you from getting shot in the back, they want to only down that person. And you want to let them get revived if you can. If you can't, you want to be the one to thirst that person and then grab their shield and move on with your fight. The more damage and kills your friends take, the less that's going to leave for you. And that could eventually cost you your 4K. Personally, I prefer to play solo queue with randoms because they're usually not as good as my friends, so that means more kills and more damage for me. And they still work as valid teammates. They'll still revive you and follow you around as long as you're making sure you're either making callouts over your microphone or in-game by pinging where you want to go and what's going on. Communication is going to be very important whether you're playing with friends or with randoms. Your friends and your randoms need to be close to you just to make sure you're safe and that you keep on surviving throughout the entire run. Through the first half of the game, remember that's when there's more than 10 squads remaining, you're going to want to be as aggressive as possible and take as many fights as possible. After there are 10 squads during the second half of the game, you're going to want to play a lot more passive. You're going to want to play a lot more for your survival. You're still going to push, but your survival is going to be a priority at that point. Whereas at the beginning of the game, the first half of the game, your survival is not as much going to be a priority because you really need a push to get in that extra damage. We've officially reached the second half of the game when there's 10 squads or less left. This is the part of the game where you're going to want to play smarter. You're going to want to play with the circle in mind, and you're going to want to play with positioning in mind. If you've got teammates with you that are your friends, you're going to want to make sure they're keeping an eye on the areas around you to make sure you're not followed while you're rotating. In general, you're going to want to make your way towards ring and try to either hold other squads out of the ring or try to start fights with squads in the ring. Alright, we're going to have a lot more time to talk now, so I'm going to start talking about different aspects of how to get your 4000 damage game and how they're going to play into it. The first thing I'm going to talk about is what characters you want to have on your team. Specifically, what kind of character you want to have on your team. As you know, there are different categories of characters in the game. I find that it works best if you have a defensive character, a movement character, and a recon character on your team. A defensive character is someone like Watson, Caustic, or Rampart. They're going to help you defend an area really easily and really quickly. This is really going to help when you need to hold a position or when there's multiple squads around you and you need a safe place to go in and out of and heal. And after you're done healing in that safe space, you can push again. This is a lot more important than people realize and a lot more valuable than people realize. The second category of legends I want to talk about are your movement legends. These are legends like Pathfinder, Octane, and Valkyrie. They're not necessarily meant for individual movement, but they're more so meant to move the team around quickly. In this sort of game, it's going to be really difficult to find enough people to get you your 4K. So you need to be moving around the map quickly. And these legends are going to help you do that by throwing zip lines, jump pads, or allowing you to literally fly into the sky. Using your jump towers and knowing how to quickly rotate between different parts of the map is going to be very important at this stage, because you need to be moving quickly to find more people. There is no time to waste. You got to be looking for your next fight. The final category of legends I want to talk about are your recon legends. These are going to be legends like Bloodhound, Seer, and Valkyrie. They're going to help you find people so you don't waste time wandering around aimlessly. But I did put this category as the third most important, and this is the category that I feel like you can swap out if you play a different legend or you want to have a different legend on your team. The defensive legends and the movement legends I find are essential and very important, and I would advise against swapping them out. But if you want to swap out your recon legends, you can definitely do that. If you do choose to swap out your recon legend though, just make sure you understand where on the map people tend to gather, where on the map people tend to move through. This is really going to help you find people, since a recon legend is not going to be able to help you find people. Speaking of moving around the map, we're going to talk about that next. You want to drop at a hot drop, and then after you're done at the hot drop, you want to move along high traffic areas. These are going to be areas that people commonly come through, and you're going to want to take these high traffic areas to another area where a lot of people usually drop or usually like to hang out at. If you are going to rotate along high traffic areas to another part of the map, just keep in mind what stage of the game you are in. Make sure that you're rotating according to ring and that you're in positioning when you're in ring. This is really going to help you stay alive, because when there's less than 10 squads left, your goal is to stay alive while fighting other squads. You want to be shooting other squads at a distance, but making sure that you have the good positioning just in case they push you so that you can stay alive. The longer you stay alive, the more damage you get, and the easier it's going to be for you to get your 4K. You may have noticed that there's now 5 squads left in the game. Up until this point, you want to be taking fights with squads that are more so defensive, but you still want to be taking those fights. You still want to be fighting other squads so you can get the damage, but just make sure you're in a good position and make sure you can rotate to the ring easily, and make sure those fights are more so defensive and less offensive. Once there's 5 squads left, you're going to want to focus on trying to figure out where those 5 squads are. You want to know where all 5 squads are so you can position yourself really good for late game to put yourself in a great position to be able to farm the rest of the squads in the game. Now let's talk about what farming is and the best techniques available to you to make sure you can farm the most amount of damage out of the squads remaining. Farming really means that you're going to want to damage other people in the game, but not really kill them. You're trying to damage them, but you don't want to eliminate them from the game. These farming techniques are what are going to allow you to get as much damage out of the squads remaining in the game as possible. Before you start farming, make sure you have good positioning. Good positioning can be high ground within the ring or somewhere where you can escape easily, because remember, at this point in the game, you're playing for your own survival. Now, we're going to interrupt our lecture on farming to talk about one of the last parts of the game, the last 3 squads. At this point, when there's 3 squads remaining, you want to understand where the other 2 squads are. And then you also want to understand which way those last 2 squads are going to come into the next circle. I'm going to try to be as clear with this as possible because it can get a little confusing. You want to put yourself in a place that accounts for where you think those squads are going to be. So if you think those squads are going to rotate a certain direction or they're going to play in a certain part of the ring, you want to put yourself in a position that counters where they're going to play. You want to make sure your positioning is better than everyone else's positioning, because this is going to allow you to farm the longest. Now, at this stage of the game, you do want to be really careful, because the other two squads can inadvertently and accidentally team up on you and wipe your squad, and there goes your 4K. You want to keep this in mind with your positioning. You want to be somewhere that sort of promotes the other two squads to fight at long range, but makes it so that they really have to push each other, or one of them is going to get shot in the back if they push you. Now let's talk about the different techniques you can use to farm damage from these last squads. What you want to do is you want to shoot at members of the last squads until you either knock them down or do a lot of damage off of them. After that, you're going to want to maybe take a break from shooting that one particular person, or shoot another member of their team and allow that other member on that team to heal up. And then you're going to want to repeat this process as many times as you can as needed. If you find yourself in more of a close range situation, you can actually fully knock down one or two members of the squad and then run away, allowing those members of the squads to actually get revived. If you find yourself in a fight that's more so close range and you want to farm the fight, you need to make sure to back up. If the enemies are pushing up on you while you're trying to farm, you can always back up further to another position. The closer they get to you, the more it's going to force a decisive fight where there's going to be a victor. By backing up, you remove that and you put yourself in a place where you can farm again and you don't have to worry about actually wiping a squad. If you're playing solo queue and you're up against a squad of 3, I do recommend thirsting one, just in case they all rush you at the same time. A 2v1 is manageable, but a 3v1 can be very difficult at certain instances. I do want to touch on what guns you want to use. You can get a 4K with pretty much any gun in the arsenal as long as you know what you're doing. But I find that for your first 4K, it's easiest to run a long-range weapon and a close-range weapon. Your long-range weapon is going to be good for damage farming, and your close-range weapon is going to be good for taking close-range fights at the first half of the game and for the second half of the game if you need to. Now, I want to stress that at this stage of the game, when there's 3 squads left, you want to keep these squads alive for as long as possible. You do not want to kill anyone unless you absolutely have to, and I'll talk about situations where you have to in a second. But you want to let these squads heal back up so that you can continue to farm them. The only time you do want to kill someone in a squad is if you're running low on ammo or heals. At this point, you want to kill one person on a squad, thirst them, grab the ammo and heals you need, and then back up again. You want to make sure you keep those other 1 or 2 members of the squad alive. At this point, I've got a little bit of time to kill, so let's review what we've heard in the video so far. In the first half of the game, you want to make sure you're pushing every squad you can so that you can get as much damage as you can out of all the people in the lobby. At the second half of the game, you still want to be pushing and you still want to take fights, but you more so want to take them in a smarter way. You want to take them with positioning and circle in mind, because at the second half of the game, it's your survival that really matters. Once there's 5 squads left, you want to more so understand how those squads are going to move around the rest of the map, how they're going to rotate into the last ring. You want to be in the best positioning to accommodate that so that you can start farming these last 5 squads. Remember that at the later stages of the game, your survival is your priority. But the other squad's survival is also your priority, because the longer you can keep the other squads alive, the more damage you can farm out of those last squads. Remember that defensive and movement legends work the best for helping you to get around the map quickly and helping you to set up a good defense on high ground. And remember especially towards the later parts of the game that you only want to kill someone if you need loot. You want to avoid thirsting people. Now I just want to put out a couple little disclaimers for all the people watching this video. In order to get a 4K, you do need to have pretty decent aim with at least your weapon of choice. And you do need to have a solid understanding of the map and how to rotate around it. This is because you're going to need to hit a lot of shots. And in order to hit a lot of shots, you're going to need to have pretty decent aim. Now, another disclaimer is that I didn't make this video map specific, and that is because maps change. Maps get taken out of rotation, maps get altered, there are different hot drops, there are different ways to rotate. If you guys do want me to make map specific guides, I can definitely do that, and just let me know in the comments below. Now we'll start to give out miscellaneous tips while we wait for another squad to die. If you're playing with a team, it can be very useful to have them hold on to heals and ammo for you. That way you have them when you need them and you can just focus on fighting. Remember that if you are playing with the team, you're supposed to be the one doing the fighting, not your team, unless they absolutely have to prevent you from dying. How many heals you want to run are mostly going to depend on what character you play and how much damage you take, but I will recommend running at least 2 stacks of shield cells because you don't want to waste your batteries or your phoenix kits when you can just use cells to heal your shield instead. Now, you might have noticed in the gameplay that right now we're actually sandwiched between both of the teams. You never want to be sandwiched in the final 2 squads, so your priority should be to reposition. If you cannot reposition, you have to kill one of the teams. In this case, the last guy on their team died to ring. So unfortunately, I didn't get to farm any more damage out of that guy. And now that brings us to just us versus the final squad. At this point, when you're fighting the final squad, you want to extract as much damage out of the final squad as possible. You want to be shooting these guys, breaking their shields, and even maybe knocking them down, and then letting them res again, just so they can heal back up and you can farm more damage out of them. This is a little bit more difficult when you're solo, because when you knock one, your teammates tend to get overexcited and decide to push in. So just be conscious of that and be aware of that, and be aware that you might need to pull them away from the team if you can. Sometimes you can't. Now, I can't stress this enough. When it's just you and the final squad left, you want to drag this out for as long as possible. You want to farm as much damage as you can out of that final squad. You want to keep repositioning around the ring so that you can drag on the fight for as long as possible. At this point, you want to avoid killing them or even knocking them until the last second, unless you absolutely have to. Unless they put you in a situation where you're going to die if you do not knock this person. That way you can farm as much damage as you can. At this point, you're going to notice I have to drop on this guy because my teammate is probably going to kill him if I don't. So unfortunately, I do have to kill him. It's going to happen like that if you're playing solo, but you know, if you're playing solo, if you're a solo queue player, you really just work with it and you work around it. Anyways, that's the end of the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it and were able to take something away from it. I really hope it's going to help you hit your first 4K. If you guys would like me to make more videos like this, like tutorials or game guides or anything like that, just leave a comment below. Let me know what you want me to do. I'm open to a lot of different ideas and suggestions. If you guys want to help me out, you could definitely subscribe. That's going to help bring the channel around to where it needs to be. And I really appreciate you watching this video to the very end. I hope you have a great rest of your day and good luck out there.